my wife started a new job teaching at a school here near our city. And earlier today, she sent me a text message with a description of this kid. And she said, I can imagine that you were probably like this kid when you were this age. And I wasn't. I didn't know my wife in school at this point. And so anyway, she sent me this text message describing this. And actually, I was not what she had described. No. Let me tell you something. In the 1980s and 90s, if my family could look like straight up hillbillies, then that's what we would have been called. Down here in Texas, they just called them white trash. And I kind of looked like white trash growing up. The plaid shirts, the pearl snaps, the cheap-looking clothes, Rustler jeans from Walmart. And when I got to thinking about this, you know what? They were the ugliest clothes known to man. The ugliest clothes. And I think a lot of us have these arguments with ourselves that these are the ugliest clothes that we've ever worn. And I got to thinking about that. I was telling my wife, I said, Kelly, I used to wear the ugliest clothes. I sent her a picture of me when I was in grade school. Look absolutely atrocious. Ugly, ugly, ugly clothes. So I wanted to just rant about how I was embarrassed by these clothes when I was a kid. Cheap tennis shoes. Rustler jeans from Walmart. Pearl snap shirts. Pretty old, wore out looking clothes. But then I was thinking about that. As embarrassed as I was of them clothes back then, because they weren't stylish, they weren't trendy, they weren't what everybody else was wearing. But they were affordable. They were cheap. They were practical. They were ugly. But now, 30 years later, I look back at these clothes. And this is the first time in my life I think I've ever thought about my daddy and those clothes. And my daddy worked hard every day to buy them clothes. Not Nintendos and Sega Genesis and big TVs and satellite dishes and all this crap. The necessities that we needed for life. Those clothes that I thought were atrocious weren't actually bad clothes at all. They looked horrible. But they taught me that clothes don't make the man. I heard my daddy say that a million times. Son, clothes don't make the man. They also taught me to treat everybody the same. Poor, rich, king, queen, pauper. They taught me that the homeless man has more to offer this world than the king. It taught me that community was more than the institutions. It was the people. You see, those clothes that I felt were pretty atrocious were actually pretty good clothes that my dad and my grandma worked for to buy us. So that way we had clothes on our back, food to eat. You see, those clothes, yeah, they say something. It's not what the rich people wear. It's not what even the middle class people wear. It's what the poor people wear. It's not everything it's cracked up to be to wear the best clothes. And I think as a 42-year-old man, 30 years later, looking back on this, I could tell the 10 or 12-year-old me a little thing or two about humility. Something I probably didn't know much about back then. But I hope I know a little bit more about it today than what I knew then. Because if I think about it, as embarrassing as those clothes were, as humiliating as those clothes were, those clothes taught me a lot. And I wish I could think back on those clothes more often. I wish I could maybe go back and wear them a day or two to remind myself that clothes don't make the man.